afternoon. Welcome to the Steelers Sanctuary Podcast. I'm Leanne Lohman. I'm joined today by David Korb, Zach Franciscus, and Bob Quinn. And we are here today, sadly, in mourning to break down the Steelers' Thursday Night Football loss to the Cleveland Browns. The Steelers lost 19-24 in Cleveland. And we'll talk a lot about the game, go through all three phases. And I think that, I don't know how we expected to win after playing the Ravens last week and after all of the statistical weird anomalies that go into playing in Cleveland on a Thursday night. Yeah, just crushing. What did you guys think in a word or two?
Set up. That's kind of what it feels like. Well, don't get me wrong. I feel we should have won, but it feels like a setup for us to lose that game.
Yeah.
I said it'd be close. I knew this wouldn't be easy. I said it'd be close. And unfortunately, it was close, but the other way. So I just, like we said, a physical game against Baltimore, getting 3 days to prepare. We know how this team is when it comes to preparing sometimes. Sometimes you can just tell they don't prepare like they need to. And guess what? I just, when I see a bunch of different things like tons of penalties, just stupid penalties, and guys being out of position, like on defense, guys being mixed up on who they're covering. That's a sign. And I mean, it was like Minka and Queen and Elliott, and it just constantly Joey Porter. I mean, just tons of guys that are supposed to be, your top players you're depending on to be locked in. They weren't locked in. And this is the result.
Yeah, I almost feel like, the national media was just waiting for this shoe to drop so that they could tell all the Steeler fans.
Oh, I say it again. You've been had. You've been taught. You've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok. This is what it.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. If you're going to be a true number one seed, if you're going to be the best, and the Steelers haven't been a number one seed since 2004. It's 20 years. Mike Tomlin's never been a number one seed. If you're going to be a number one seed, you have to beat the 2-8 Browns. I know they're your rival. I know there's 4 feet of snow on the ground, but you have got to win the game. It looked like we were ill prepared. Part of that is because we played the Ravens on Sunday, and the NFL gives us Cleveland on a Thursday. Most of the guys didn't practice on Wednesday. Najee and a bunch of other guys sat out saying, hey, so we didn't even practice really. And then you walk out there, you look confused. And bottom line is they still had a chance to win the game. They're down 18-6 playing as bad as they could be. Russell Wilson all of a sudden comes out of nowhere. Little Justin Fields help along the way. All of a sudden, hey, it's 19-18 with 7 minutes to go. And we intercept it and get the ball back. And then we blew it. We just blew it. The offense didn't pick up a first down. I don't know what Justin Fields was thinking throwing a go ball from the pocket. If that was the play call, it was a stupid one. You roll him out on that play. High, low, go. Cleveland couldn't stop him rolling to the outside. So why not do it? I don't understand. And then the defense, it was a snowstorm. Yeah, it was tough. But that last drive, there was no pressure. We had Jameis sacked. The game was over. They had him on 4th down. They let him go. He got the first down. We lose the game. A lot of bad here. A lot of unprepared. You could excuse some of it, but as far as letting them give a pass, look, you might still win the division. You probably still will win the division. But as far as can we beat Buffalo and Kansas City, I don't want to hear any of that talk until we actually beat Kansas City or Philadelphia or somebody like that.
So let's talk about the game and go through it kind of all three phases and kind of break it down that way. I think that makes it the most digestible. I think it's frustrating, and you look at it, we look at it in a linear way, chronologically, and I think it's a frustrating game. I think there's a lot, like Bob said, of negative to go around. I think there's some positives you can take out of it too. I tend to be that kind of person that tries to look at the bright side of things. And even though I was frustrated by the loss, I walked away feeling like at least we mounted that comeback, because at halftime, man, I thought, boy, this is bad. We're just going to get our asses kicked for 4 quarters. I mean, I felt like we hadn't really shown much of anything. And so I was really concerned that we were just going to, be kicked up and down the field. So I was pleased to see that we mounted a comeback. I thought there was some stuff that went against us that wasn't necessarily our fault. But by that same token, you can't put yourself in that position where some some bad play call or some officiating is what really impacts you. So let's start off by talking about the offense. What did you guys see? Zach, we'll start with you. What did you see from that offense, that really surprised you, that you thought was good, that you thought was terrible, that you thought you didn't expect to see?
It's hard to find the good. The good is going to be little tiny things here and there. It was a lot of bad, and I'm trying to be, like you said, I'm trying to not just be positive, but look at the extraneous circumstances going on. Not just the weather, not just the 3 days, but that the Browns did this to the Ravens earlier in the year too. So the Browns are playing AFC North games differently than they're playing other games. I'm not at where Bob is yet, believing that this offense isn't taken, but it definitely took a big hit in my confident contender status declaration last week that the Steelers decided not to back up, including my prediction. So disappointing is how I'd put, and disjointed. Both of those were unexpected for the offense.
Yeah, I don't know. I John in chat made a comment about the red zone. I agree totally. At the beginning of the game, it was there for us to run away. We get Boz. Zach made a good point in prep about, hey, why do you try a 58-yarder in the wind? I didn't have a huge problem with that. Let's see what his range is going in that direction. We feel pretty confident it's 0-0. But then, they were big plays to be had. I mean, Russell Wilson hits Calvin Austin on a nice post. And if he led him at all, if he didn't have to slow down and catch that ball, that's a touchdown. I mean, there were plays to be had with the plays down the field, and then we just bleh. I think Jeff Adhorn made this point on 93.7 this week, that when the Steelers get down there, they're averaging on first and second down a total of 3 yards combined between the two plays. So Arthur Smith has got to adjust. You cannot run the ball for 1 yard every single freaking time on first down when you get to the red zone. First of all, at this point, every defense expects it. That's why they're stopping it. Hey, maybe run a play action there. I mean, he's not averse to play action. It's not like Matt Canada where he didn't know that was an option. I questioned some of the play calling in the red zone. The whole offense in general just seemed lackadaisical. I thought the offensive line started really bad, got a little better as the game went on. But ultimately, it's just like Baltimore. We gave up too many sacks. Yeah, good point. The O-line is struggling. Yeah. I did think they played better in the second half.
Yeah, the Steelers lost because of the sins they committed in the first half. I mean, look, the O-line, atrocious. They gave up, I think all 4 sacks were in the first half, correct? At least 3 were. At least 3 were.
I think so, 3 by...
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think they avoided the sacks in the second half because they started using the Fields package. They did get Fields behind the line once, but I think that was a run.
If you combine the struggle of an O-line with most wide receivers struggling to get separation, with a quarterback who holds the ball longer than anybody, you have a recipe for disaster. And Cleveland exposed this by bringing a lot of pressure. And that was the issue. And they couldn't do anything. I mean, when the wide receivers did get up, where the tight ends, Russ didn't see them. They showed Pat Fryermuth had that opening there where he could have went for days. Russ didn't see him. And Russ rolled out to look that way and still didn't see him. So, and then when Russ didn't have any time to breathe, he got killed. Like, it just, the whole thing was atrocious. The penalties, the play calls on 4th down. You've got Justin Fields out there. You line him up in pistol and give him 7 yards to have to get? That's just so stupid.
And don't put a wide receiver on the field.
Yeah, you had no illusion created that you might throw it and could spread them out to give him room. They line 9 up in the box, and you're going to go, hey, Justin Fields, try to run 7 yards against 9 guys going full speed at you. Ain't going to happen. Like, what? Like, come on, man. You're getting paid millions of dollars here. Can we be smarter than this? Just
Tim
stupid.
Ben said today that he felt like the way they used Justin Fields, particularly on that third down play where they asked him to throw, he felt like it was them saying, oh, look how smart we are. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was like them taunting, like being arrogant in their play calling, instead of like using Fields in a manner that actually makes a lot of sense. So you have this guy and you have this ability, and you saw what Taysom Hill did against the Browns. And you, not that you're going to try to take Fields and make him be Taysom Hill, but those types of plays, do you know what I mean? And what was working. So then why would you try to do something totally different? Why would you not have your better passer throwing a third down pass? Do you know what I mean? Like, you waited till then to try to confuse people with a pass from Fields, and it just didn't make sense. We're getting a lot of comments about the coaching, and I want to ask you guys about that offensive coaching. Let's stick to for right now. And our friend Undefined said that he feels that coaching was a problem. Do you guys, I know that there's lots of frustration about some of the play calling, but overall, do you feel like coaching was a problem, Bob?
Okay, so as far as Arthur Smith goes, look, you can design stuff where people are open, but if your quarterbacks aren't going to throw it to them, it really doesn't matter. Now, that being said, did I love the fourth down play calls like David brought up? No, they were stupid. I don't think it was a, hey, we're too smart, we're going to show you Justin Fields can throw. My issue with that play call is throwing from the pocket. Russ runs that play action where he boots out and then throws it to Darnell Washington most of the time when he does it, and it's a high-low read. You want to send Pickens on a go route? I'm okay with that. You want to send a tight end right across there? But as he rolls out, Fields is going to look, and he's going to think in his head, and we want him to think this in his head, hey, can I run for this? Because if I can run for this, I'm not going to put it in the air. I'm just going to go. But if I can't, that means they're crashing me, so one of those two guys has got to be open. I also think, in fairness to Fields, if that's Pickens running on a grass field, I think he catches that ball. I don't think it's way too far out where he couldn't get it. I think the snow was slowing him down, and Fields, because he wasn't playing during the game, he threw it like, hey, if I'm throwing to George in practice, this is how I throw it. I don't think it was a particularly bad pass. I just think he didn't factor in the weather. I do like that the ball was not on a line. It looked like he threw it up, and he is learning that touch from Russell Wilson, which, you know, is truthfully the missing piece of his game. If he can learn that, that's great. Overall, did I think Arthur Smith called a good game? I'd give him a C-, maybe a D+. I still think we tried to force Najee way too much when it was readily apparent Jalen was more effective last night.
Yeah, Jalen was more effective last night. What about you, David?
Oh, Arthur Smith gets an F for me. CPAT lined up at wide receiver when you need a 2-point conversion.
There you go.
Dude, you've got Washington, you've got Mike Williams, you've got Pickens, you've got all these guys. You want to throw it to your third-string running back? Like, what are we doing here? Like, again, the play calling was atrocious. The players selected for these plays was atrocious. It just doesn't make any sense. Maybe it's the arrogance thing, like you mentioned, Leah. I don't know. It doesn't make sense that the players they decide to use. It's just like the toss play, right? It's the same thing. Why are we? But the obsession with CPAT, I can't get over it. I can't. I liked the play design whenever they had Cordell Patterson going in motion behind the quarterback, and they had him going opposite where they were going to go with the ball. I liked that kind of stuff. You want to use them as a distraction, fine. But to use them like when you need those 2 points, stupid. To use him on the toss plays when he's slow as Moses, I'm sorry, he's just not fast. I just don't get it, guys. I don't. It's just Arthur Smith. I have a little bit of issue with Mike Tomlin, but not as much as Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith last night, it was because it was the anniversary of you-know-who getting fired. It felt like he wanted to take us back to that time frame. It really did, because I was not happy with the play calling at all last night.
We were outcoached. Flat out. And more than that, the two words of the day, Leanne, you said, and I've been saying it, it's arrogance. It's the number one, and I saw that a lot in the game. But number two is regression. That's the most concerning thing to me. There was a lot of regression, things we saw in this that we simply haven't seen this year, that have been Mike Tomlin specials and showed up again. So I'm hoping it's a 3-day thing, because that's genuinely concerning me, because I'm hoping this is our aberration, where, because every team at the end of the year, where if they end up being contenders, has those 1 or 2 games they look back and like, oh, things were rocky then. I'm hoping this is ours and we get right back on it. But yeah, my concern is now there, and it wasn't before. So we were outcoached.
Seems like it's fair that like every team, do you know what I mean? Even the Patriots back in the day when they were winning Super Bowl after Super Bowl, lose a game that you're not supposed to lose. Like, I don't feel like that's so unheard of. Do you know what I mean? So like, I'm trying to put it in that context. I heard Ryan Clark say today that he felt like we all should have known that they were going to lose this game because, of their record. He said, forget all the other stuff, but the record after the Ravens. He said, yes, we all come here in the media, players, we talk to the media and say, oh yeah, we treat every game the same. We prepare the same for every game. He said, it's bull. He said, you prepare differently for the Ravens. You invest a different amount of energy and time into preparing for that game. You almost can't control it. It's a different mental and emotional toll on the team. And he said, so, trying to bounce back from that, players aren't even physically ready to go until Thursday. And, some of them, and now you're playing a game on Thursday, you just haven't had a full chance to recover. So he said, it's not an excuse, but in that way, he said, it is a trap game, maybe by the league or whatever you want to call it, where they set you up to play this game like this right after this other game. I think because the Browns have been so bad on paper this year, I don't think that they've been given credit for some of the things they have that are really good. You know what I mean? There are some real playmakers on that team, and at the risk of sounding like Mike Tomlin, I think we can't take away from that. So I didn't even feel like we underestimated them. I just feel like we weren't prepared for them.
That's true. No, I don't know if was just because the cameras happened to be there, or if it was overdone, or they're just getting ready for Hard Knocks. But I saw something that was supposed to be like hyping up and inspiring, and made me concerned right off the bat. Before the game, you had Mike Tomlin with the wide receivers around him, and he said, you are the difference makers. You're the playmakers. You're the guys that are sitting there like, those are the guys you're choosing to hype up and saying that to? Out of everyone, those are the guys that to you
maybe
are
they needed it the most.
I'm wondering if it was that, because that honestly I'm like, do you want this to work? Is that what, are we forcing this issue? That concerned me. I'm hoping it was drama and it was for the cameras, it was Mike Tomlin messing with people, but that I didn't like that at all. And also, I like, Leanne, really quick, if I would have gone back to the beginning of the season, I would have said, hey guys, going into the Bengals game, we're going to be 8-3, and we would have had a nice long winning streak that would have included 7-2 Commanders team and the Ravens right up. We would have been very happy. The context of this and the timing definitely skews it. But on the overall thing that a lot of people in the media doubted us, and we doubted us for a lot of things, we're still 8-3. So there is some foundation we have where this loss isn't as bad as it could be.
Yeah. David, what do you think is wrong with the red zone? I see Relic brought up again that the red zone has actually been an issue, he feels like, for 3 years across multiple quarterbacks. So that makes it not Russell Wilson's problem, not Arthur Smith's problem. And he suggests that maybe is Mike Tomlin limiting the OC from going full out. Do you think that's a real factor?
Yes, he does do that. He makes his offensive coordinators go uber conservative, and he was doing it this year. He was going uber conservative in the first half, and then had to let them unleash, Justin Fields or the offense. And it does it all the time. I think Bob brought it up. I mean, like on some play calls, they should have spread the wide receivers out and give the illusion that they're gonna, maybe throw the ball. And it's the same in the red zone. It's the same thing. They should give that illusion, even for Russell Wilson, that they may pass it. They don't. They line everybody up in bunch, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, they know what you're going to do now, and they just line everybody up to stop the run, and it's obvious, and you get nowhere with it. Some of it was Arthur Smith for sure, but there's also with Tomlin as well. I completely believe what he's saying, that, yes, Tomlin limits things. He's got to have, control of a lot of stuff. And yes, Tomlin's partial blame for some of that stuff too. There's no doubt in my mind.
You guys know when it started? Really quick. I was curious because I'm trying to remember. There was a moment where things shifted, where we used to be the team that when we got into the red zone, especially in the 10, we lined it up with our big back and we ran that in. And at some point we stopped and we started going empty sets with Ben. And I don't know when that started, but that to me is when the red zone issue started to happen, when we went away from what I believe you're supposed to do with the kind of team that we tend to build in the red zone. And we started getting really fancy with those killer bees and with all of that. So I don't know when that happened, but to me, that's the moment things shifted. Sorry about that, Bob.
We had somebody ask where the good-looking guy is with the beard. I can only assume that you mean
I'm right
Dave.
here.
Is that Dave? That a burner account?
It must be Dave's burner account. Was fine to do it. He's making the show today, and we're sadder than you are, but we'll let him know he has an admiring fan.
I heard this week the idea from the Tomlin Arthur Smith dynamic is what they thought was happening was when they get inside the 20, they are looking to secure the 3 points, and if they get 7, it's okay. But don't lose the 3 points when you get down there. And I think that's exactly the wrong way to play it in the red zone. I think you have to say, I'm looking for 7, and if I have to settle for 3, okay. Part of this is because the reliance on the defense and the special teams and everything. You know, the announcers love to make the point, oh, Pittsburgh wins with defense and special teams and running the ball. Well, that is all well and good till we get inside the 20 and Najee goes 1st and 10, 2nd and 9, 3rd and 7, go, float ball to Pickens, incomplete, kick a field goal. And that seems to be the plan. I saw Yinzer down south thinks I was waiting for a loss to be ultra negative. And John defended me, said realistic, not negative. It's not a matter of
negative too.
Yeah, it's not a matter of being ultra negative. It's just a matter of looking at this team and realizing what we are and what we aren't. We're still a work in progress. We have time to fix this, but you have to be realistic at this point. Buffalo is probably the most complete team in the conference. And if we're going to make excuses for losing to the Browns because we played the Ravens 3 days ago, I got news for you, folks. Are we going to be okay with getting beat by 60 by the Chiefs on Christmas Day? Because that's 4 days after a Ravens game. So are we just going to build in the excuses? Now, luckily, I think it's on a Wednesday instead of a Thursday, so we can factor out this whole 0-6, and then we're playing at home. Look, at this point, you have to look at things as a trend. Is there a reason why Mike Tomlin is now 1-8 on Thursday road games, with the only win being a Thanksgiving Day win way back when, 0-8 at night? Yeah, it's because you don't have much time to prep for those games. You have to have, and maybe it's a little unfair to blame the coaches when you have no prep time. You're coming off a physical game, no matter when you played, who you played. And all of a sudden, you can't practice your guys. You got to turn around and get ready, which means you really got to rely on your basic game plan, which means if you're playing a divisional opponent, it's like David said, it's going to be not hard. I thought it'd be close for a half and we pull away. Boy, was I wrong. It was not close for a half and we somehow snuck back in. I don't know that I would 1,000,000% blame coaching, but there is a coaching element to this. There's an execution element to this. And frankly, I think everybody just felt, well, going into the game, well, if we lose, we lose. It's not that big of a deal. We never win on Thursday night. Hey, you want to stop a trend? How about treat it like it's an emergency on a Thursday night? Because the last thing I want to see is us beat Baltimore in a couple of weeks and then go get blown out and embarrassed on Netflix if any of us actually get to watch the game against the Kansas City Chiefs.
I think that game's not going to actually be on Netflix, I saw. We had somebody ask about Mike Williams and what's going on with him. Relic wants to know, we've had him for a couple of weeks now. We saw that one catch, where he caught the touchdown pass. I think it was against the Commanders. We learned after the fact that really wasn't even meant to be his pass. If I'm correct, I think it was meant for Calvin Austin III. Austin was hurt. They sent it to Mike Williams. He caught it. I think we all kind of expected to see him last week against the Ravens. And I think we talked about it last week. He was in for something like 5 snaps or something ridiculous and didn't do anything. And I saw that there was another comment here from Richard, who said that, all these teams passed on him, so stop acting like we know what he looks like and acts like at practice. If they thought he would help, he would be in the game. Do you think he's not being used because he doesn't help the team? Do any of you have a thought about why we aren't seeing him? Or do you think it's just a matter of them helping him learn the ropes of the Steelers?
It's Mike Tomlin. It's a comfortability thing, period.
And for what Mike Williams, what Mike Williams does best is really, really long balls, and we already have someone for that. And we don't have an offensive line that gives us a lot of chances to have those passes. So if he's not good at the intermediate, if he's not good at the short, and then we're not going to have him in at all, since those long balls are not going to beat him, and we're not going to throw him anyway because we don't have the time.
Overreading into the wide receivers, Zach.
and look
into it.
Look at, I mean, that I was kind of tongue in cheek with the moving train thing, but Roman Wilson couldn't get on the field, and he was our 3rd round draft pick. I mean, part of it was because he was hurt, but even when he was healthy for 3 weeks, he couldn't get on the field. Now, Mike Williams, we traded for him. We gave up, draft capital. Not that, it was a ton, but we gave up draft capital to get him. I saw Preston Smith a bunch last night, but where's Mike Williams? And I think there's a good point from Richard. A lot of teams did pass on him. Let's face it, Mike Williams was not the first choice of this program, but we got him and we all put rose-colored glasses on. And let's face it, the Commanders game, he paid immediate dividends. I don't know why he can't get on the field. He couldn't get on the field very much for the Jets either. So
Sandra wonders wonders if they'll ever consider getting rid of Thursday night games. From your lips to God's ears, Sandra, man, I hope so.
That's my aunt. Hi, Aunt Sandra.
Oh, hi. We hate them, Zach's aunt. I hate them. I won't speak for everybody else. I hate them.
There's too much money to be made, Leanne.
There it is.
I heard somebody say yesterday that they think we're headed to where there's going to be a game every freaking night, and you'll have teams that are playing 2 days apart, sometimes, and the NFL will go, oh, well.
Too big to fail. They'll have one every day in the future.
And in every country.
And just think back to last year, what they added in. You can now flex teams to Thursday night. So they get done playing on Sunday.
Didn't that just happen today to the Bengals, or did I misread that tweet?
They got flexed to Sunday night. I don't think the NFL has done it yet, but this is what, Art Rooney argued against last year, and then magically the Steelers had a bunch of Thursday night games. So, player safety, you would think Thursday, it's ridiculous. Player safety is a joke to the NFL. It's just a way for them to say, okay, we got to protect Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and all those guys and throw some flags. You don't protect Joe Burrow. He gets face masked 2-3 times in front of the opponent. No problem. There was a run where Najee early in the game, the guy had a hold of his face mask and he's pulling him down. And it's like, what are you looking at? You can't see that's a face mask. Pickens was running a route, and the defensive back had him by the face mask.
There's been several of those this season, particularly against Najee, because he's so hard to bring down. Watch TJ once again. Everybody talks about how TJ gets, eliminated and tied up during these games, but he's also getting held the entire game. And it's easy to understand his frustration. Before we transition to the defense, I want to talk for a second about something that I thought was really surprising that's last night, and that's that the special teams unit really wasn't as consistently good as they have been this season. I think we've been really spoiled with how well Danny Smith has been doing. Now, maybe there's an element of this that's weather. Do you know what I mean? The 58-yard field goal in inclement weather with the wind, and a wet ball, maybe just not ideal conditions. Do you know what I mean? Maybe in hindsight is 2020, maybe they should have punted the ball, pinned him deep, whatever. But then Corliss Waitman shanked a punt late in the game. Of course, we're still having fewer shank punts than we did with Presley Harvin. So I guess we have to take that with where we can get it. But what did you guys think about the special teams unit? David, what did you think?
Look, I think in prep, I was telling you guys, I wasn't sure if you were on or not, Leanne, but I was saying, like, on the missed field goal, it was a bad snap, and so it caused the hold to not be great. And I mean, literally the second before he kicked, I went, it's not going to be good. And sure enough, it sailed to the right. So some of that, I don't want to make excuses for Boss, but and inclement weather too. Like, it's tough. I get it. So that there, I was upset at the result, but wasn't upset knowing what happened.
Right.
When it comes to Waitman and the punt, just horrible timing. Like, why did it have to be when we need to pin them deep? Like, you couldn't have picked a worse time to shank a punt whenever we need to pin them deep and make it take a while for them to try to get down there. So it really hurt. And you're right. He's been amazing for a guy picking him up off the street again. He's been way better than Harvin ever had been for us. So, it sucks. It's just a bad fucking game, man. Like, when it rains, it pours, literally snow. But yeah.
I wonder how much of it has to do with we have a short week where your only practice was a walkthrough in t-shirts and shorts, and special teams already gets a lower percentage of that practice time. How much practice time do they get, if any at all, on a 3-day week? So it's probably like, okay, guys, on your own time, look at special teams if you can. And that's pretty much the extent of time they were able to give it on those 3 days. So I have to imagine that impacts that's why they were still. I mean, they didn't have any other than the Waitman thing, no like major huge things, no fumbled things, but it wasn't what we were used to. So,
John in chat said, Waitman got him. He was high on him. I think he could still be high on him. The Cleveland punter shanked a punt, and unfortunately, we got a penalty that kind of wasted that for us. So it wasn't the only 12-yarder in the conditions in the game. It was also his only punt. So, I mean, yeah, I feel bad that it happened for him. I'm not ready to say he's terrible. I think he'll recover. It was just really bad timing. Last night, Dave, our other Dave, who couldn't make it this afternoon, as soon as the punt happened, right away said in chat that's going to cost us the game, and ultimately it did. So,
that was
I didn't think the tackling on special teams was really that good last night. I think on the kickoff return especially, there was a couple where it was very near something bad is going to happen, but they were getting the ball at the 35 instead of, inside, running them back and getting them pinned behind the 30. So all in all, and I'm willing to give that the benefit of the doubt. I think what Pickens says about the weather, there are certain elements that are affected by the weather. Your field goal kicker, Boz makes that field goal. We're probably talking about a little bit different game, but then again, a 58-yarder in the wind, who knows?
Yeah.
I'd give the special teams overall like a C. I don't, obviously the punt was an F, but Boz made a couple of field goals that, frankly, he didn't have any business making, even though he missed the 58-yarder.
Couldn't see the ball.
Yeah.
Like, he'd kick it, and I was like, did he make it? I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought
they have chips in the ball, right? That's probably how they knew. I imagine
two referees looking up into the snow.
Yeah.
That's what they have.
You're counting on. So let's switch over to talk about the defense and how they performed in that game. And boy, frustrating. Richard brings up that he felt like, Coach T, look, no team's going to show you what they want to run anymore. You're wasting your timeouts because you think the play and can counter it. I mean, I guess we could also say that did work against the Ravens to some degree. You know what I mean? So you can't, maybe it didn't work this time, but I don't know that in football anything works 100% of the time. So what did you guys think of the defense? Zach, you want to start?
It was there were positive moments, but mostly I was really surprised because they gave us multiple chances to win, and I think what I call arrogance and an unnecessary approach to a team with a small margin of error on offense put our defense in situations where they had to do a lot early on in a game where they had minimal. It seemed like it was some tone-deaf play calling and a tone-deaf approach to how we did defense, and I haven't seen or used that word a lot since last season. And yet again, another concerning thing. But I have to go back to check the tape, but from everything I saw, Patrick Queen still played with his hair on fire, despite the fact it was snow. He was one of the few major positives that I saw that was consistently someone I'm like, there you go. So if you have to pick one positive, it's Patrick Queen. But other than that,
What about you, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, you're playing against Jameis Winston, okay? And here's the one I heard Steve Palazzolo made this point yesterday on the PM team before the game, and I think it's a good one. If there's one guy in the league that you cannot plan for, that you cannot explain from game to game, and even from play to play, it's Jameis Winston. And Jameis Winston really beat us. I thought we did a good job on Chubb. And yeah, he got the 2 touchdowns, but you get inside the 5-yard line, you give it to Nick Chubb, he's going to score.
Yeah.
I mean, he had 58 yards on 20 carries. I don't think they could do much better than that against a running back like Chubb, even though he is a little bit hurt. But it was Jameis. All the big plays were Jameis. He throws the ball for an interception. He throws the ball for a touchdown. I mean, it's so frustrating to watch and play against that guy. I like Jameis personally. If he wasn't with the Browns, I'd be rooting for him wherever he goes. But right now, he's with the Browns, so I got to root against him. He's just hard to figure out. He's hard to play. So you can't game plan for the Browns with Jameis at quarterback like you could with Deshaun Watson or, whoever the 84 quarterbacks they've had in the last 10 years are. Jameis is just a weird guy. Personally,
literally.
Yeah, before the game, he's giving a religious speech. I mean, I was like, "What the heck are we doing? Are we going to church? Or are we playing football here?" But he believes all that stuff. You gotta just like the guy, even though we lost to him. And yeah, I hate losing to the Browns. If you can't smile with Jameis and his play style, then you're probably watching the wrong sport.
I thought it was funny yesterday. Somebody on one of the shows was saying, okay, who do you think would be funnier to have on the Wheel of Fortune, George Pickens or Jameis Winston? I forget who it was that was on the show, but he said, look, he's like, as much as I love George Pickens, he's like, I got to go with Jameis Winston because he said, they'd have a puzzle that was like 52 words and they'd have like one Y at the end of a word and Jameis would like know exactly what it was, but then you'd have another puzzle with like 3 words and every letter but one vowel and he'd be like, I don't know. David, what were your thoughts on the defense?
Again, the sins of the first half. They got 0 pressure on Winston. He was able to sit back there and find people get open. And that was the one thing that really stuck out to me. I think one of the commentators said, you got to pressure him. He does a lot worse when he's under pressure. So the Steelers should know this. So why they didn't dial up more pressure in the first half is beyond me. Again, the confusion, seeing Elliott and Queen not pick up who they're going to cover in zone. Same thing with JPJ and Minka on that Judy first down in the second half. That was actually a killer first down when they were driving. I think it was like 4th and 2 or something, and they converted that killer. The tackling was another issue for me. There was about 2 or 3 plays where the Steelers would run, and they thought because they hit the guy hard enough that he should just fall down, and it didn't happen. And Queen on that one where it was like 3rd and 2, it was one where if you stop them, they're probably going to punt, and it didn't happen. He ran up and hit the guy hard and just stopped, and the guy Yeah, and the guy was just like,
out of the game, though.
Yeah, well, okay, great, but they still converted. So it's just like, not good. So it's just like, dude, hit and wrap and take them down. I think on the Jameis Winston TD run, a guy went for the hit instead of actually hitting and wrapping him to stop his forward progression. Yeah. He completely whiffed. He launched himself so hard to hit Winston. Winston just like stepped to the side and he went flying by and he walked in, jumped into the end zone. Dude, quit going for the big hit and go for the tackle to stop their forward progression. Just because you hit a guy, these guys are big dudes. Just because you hit them hard doesn't mean they're going to go down. Don't just stop. There's not a rule where if you hit them hard, they have to fall down.
Didn't you guys think they were rushing? They were playing Jameis like they played Lamar Jackson. They were like not committing to the pressure, and Jameis escaped because of it.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's a good way to put it, Bob. Like I just a lot of mistakes. Again, for what looked like a ill-prepared team that wasn't really ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, how about Hall of Fame? How about our buddy Hall of Fame Herbig?
Yeah, brings up that that they were okay in the second half, and I think it does speak to that bigger issue of the Steelers being somewhat slow to warm up this year. I think we've seen this in all of Russ's games except for the Giants, right? So, looked kind of slow to warm up this year on both sides of the ball. He said Herbig showed up, fourth interception by Dante Jackson. Although he'd like them to stop the zone crap, defense is leaving receivers open by 5 yards or more. And hello, Minka, I got to agree especially about the part about leaving receivers open. It's really painful to watch, people so uncovered, and then you just have to wonder, what they're doing. And I don't feel like the Browns were running some kind of like crazy tricky offenses. I'm on my couch screaming out, what you need to be watching out for.
Well, the guys who are wide open were the tight ends. I mean, they did a lot of damage with the 3 tight ends. Judy caught a couple of key passes, but hey, you think those receivers are open now against zone? Watch what happens when we play man with our corners on a good set of receivers. Yeah. We play man against Cincinnati, we might give up 85 points.
Like literally, man against Chase, dangerous, so dangerous.
And the word of the day, David, you said the word of the day. Confusion, and Leanne's brought up the miscommunication on defense. There was more of that last night than probably in the entire season combined. It felt like the last couple of seasons where defensive guys were, especially in the red zone, they were like looking at each other like they didn't really know exactly what was going on, and it felt like the whole team just desperately wanted to get a halftime and just sit down and take a breath. That's what the whole first half felt like. Just get to halftime, just get to halftime, just get to halftime, and we came out and we were better, sure, but it really felt for a little bit, not the whole game, but just for a little bit, like we were like, you know what? If we have to lose one game, it might as well be this one. For a moment, I felt that energy from it, and I was like, I don't like that at all. So well, it might be true. I don't like that.
Well, George Pickens certainly didn't have that energy. He was ready to fight the whole stadium.
Right. We're going to talk about that. So let's not talk about that quite yet, because we're going to talk about all of that for a minute. Relic brings up there was big confusion and play that Jackson stopped and Minka didn't read. And for the tackle on Judy that led to a touchdown, it was such a letdown. I felt like, on both sides of the ball, there was confusion. I mean, we're bringing Fields in. He's supposed to be confusing the Browns, and it looked like we were more confused than anybody. Like, what the hell was Connor Hayward doing? And it was so frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, that play with Fields, I mean, you're exactly right. We were more confused. They had to rush the play. And on top of that, I think that's why they picked such a stupid play in the first place, because they had to rush it. And it was in the first half. Call the damn timeout. Like, get it right. You don't got to rush. It's the first half. Use the timeout. And they didn't do it. And I'm sitting there, I'm going, dude, you got 5 seconds, 4 seconds. Like, why didn't you guys just call the timeout? Get it figured out. Get it right. This is important. You're going for it on fourth down. They rushed it and fucked it up. And there you go.
I want to talk for a minute about all the penalties and just kind of get, I don't want to go into it for an hour, but just your brief thoughts about what was going on. There's been a lot of talk about them today. I heard a good explanation from Gene Steratore about that illegal touching penalty. But in general, there was a lot of missed calls and some other screwy stuff. Bob, what were your thoughts on those?
I didn't think the referees particularly had a good game, but then again, I generally don't think the referees have a very good game in most instances. I actually was really perturbed by that. What I should have been grounding penalty that they called illegal touching. I'm sorry, but if Stefanski, and he showed his hand, he was dumb enough, he was going for it on 4th and 2. You back him up to 3rd and 7. What's the point? You want to hold him to a field goal? Screw that. If he wants to have a 4th and 2 play for the game, have a 4th and 2 play for the game. And intentional grounding is loss of down, so it would have been 4th down back there. So the whole the whole confusion of I didn't realize it wasn't grounding. Well, yeah, you did, because you were going to decline the penalty. So what, you weren't going to take the yards on the penalty? I mean, that whole answer didn't make sense to me. There were times during the game where I was looking at it. I mean, I can't look at any one particular call other than a couple of missed face masks. I mean, I do think, now they didn't call it on either side, but they were letting them get away with murder on George Pickens. And maybe we got away with some murder too that they didn't show as much of because Jameis didn't throw the ball in the area of the guy. But yeah, I thought there was a lot of content, and even Al Michaels and Herb Street on one particular one where they showed it where it looked like they grabbed Pickens. They're like, "Hey, I don't get it. Why is that not a penalty?" And Herb Street made the point of, why is the defensive back getting rewarded for running aimlessly down the field and jostling with Pickens? He's not playing the ball. He's not doing anything except for, hey, I don't want to get beat deep.
What did you think, David?
Yeah, I'm so sick of, what I saw in this game was just the letdowns on all these passing plays with the secondary. I thought the edge rushers got better in the second half, but not the secondary. Minus the interception by Jackson, right? That was good. But besides that, I didn't see that much improvement from the secondary. I thought they still continued to struggle, and was one of the main reasons for the letdown that we lost the game was the secondary and the confusion. But the edge rushers got better. You heard Big with the big play. TJ had a quiet game. He had that one tackle for a loss, that tackle on Chubb, I think, in the backfield. That was it, though. I mean, there was not much. Now, to his, defense, they were chipping him and doubling and tripling him up and stuff like that. But, that's what I wanted to bring up, though. Why not switch him and Herbig then? Why didn't they do like they've been doing a couple different times while Highsmith was out, or maybe Herbig? Because I feel they were doing some switching when they were doing that.
Browns did that with Garrett.
Right. So why didn't the Steelers do that again? Just go ahead and give them a different look since they're going all out to stop them. Then switch it up a little bit. But they didn't do it at all. They just kept, running into a wall with TJ with three guys chipping them or blocking them or whatever. It just didn't make sense to me. But I did think as a whole, the edge rushers got better in the second half, but the secondary still struggled.
Yeah. Relic brings up that there was multiple missed calls on Garrett. That very much reminded me last night, and I've been working on not saying stuff like that this season, of the way that Tom Brady used to always get treated differently. Do you know what I mean? In games, and felt like, Garrett's like this NFL sweetheart because their team sucks, and so he's a bright spot and they all love him. So I did feel like he was getting treated much differently last night than TJ, and frustrating to see that Dan Moore didn't play him as well as he has in the past, the offensive line in general. But yeah, that was frustrating. That was one thing that I always felt like Dan Moore did well. Zach, what did you think about the penalties? And then I want to talk a second about the kind of bedlam after the game. Did we lose Zach?
No, I'm still here. My other camera broke off.
Okay.
Could you repeat the question really quick?
If you had anything you wanted to add about the penalties before we start talking about, kind of the chaos after the game?
Yes, it just ties into what I said about the limited margin of error on offense that we have expected. Defensive penalties, I feel like we can kind of overcome. But though the 3rd and 1s that became 3rd and 6, it's the 2nd and 2s that became 2nd and 7s. To all of those, we're not the kind of offense that could overcome that. And that really hurt us too. So self-inflicted wounds that were not bad calls by the refs, that were our fault.
So after the game, I saw that there was, like George Pickens got in that fight with Newsom where he practically went into the stands at one point. And I mean, it was crazy. There was a lot of, very much expected chippiness during the game. I mean, we see it always against the Browns. So I don't think it was unexpected. There was the one play where they dragged, was it Jalen Warren or somebody into the bench? Anyways, there was a lot of that. And then after the game,
KZ, I guess it was KZ.
That's what it was, KZ, yeah. And Minka got into it, or didn't get into it, I'm sorry. Minka and Najee refused to talk to the media afterwards. Najee just walked out. Minka said, I'm not talking to anybody. Cam got clearly irritated when somebody in the media said, this team hasn't faced adversity in a month. And he said, well, what did we do last week against the Ravens? He feels like it's adversity. Like every game is adversity. These are all professional teams. And there was, some of those things that were going on. I thought it was really interesting today. Cavalli did an article that he put out this afternoon. And, there's a lot of commentary from people about some of the, how riled up the players were, and the comments is particularly that Pickens made. And he said, I think that this is like a kind of comes up as like a turning point for this team. Do you know what I mean? Like you can what you do with this and where you go for the rest of this season kind of defines who you become. And he went on to say in the article that he doesn't believe this will turn into the 2009 Unleash Hell in December Steelers. He thinks that having Russell Wilson on the team will help this group, come back together. He said that he sees more of that maturity and settledness from the team despite what happened yesterday. And he feels like, Wilson is the difference. They haven't had that quarterback leadership in a couple of years. Wanted to ask you guys what you thought about what went on yesterday. David, you want to start with all of that?
Well, look, if they're pissed off, good. And take it out on the Bengals, please.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you something right now. Joe Burrow and Chase scare the hell out of me. And if they're not prepared for this game, they've got 9-10 days, whatever. They better be prepared and ready to go, because I think it's at Cincinnati, if I remember correctly. So this is not going to be an easy game. Another division game away. So they better be dialed in. And if they're pissed off, good. Be pissed off. You should be pissed off. You just lost to a 2-8 team. And I honestly, I don't give a shit about whatever, the weather, referees, whatever. It's a 2-8 team. You scored how many points in a blink of an eye in that second half? But in that first half, you choked. And you made stupid mistakes. Either it would be coaching or the players. So, yeah, be pissed off. Good. I want you to be. Use it as motivation in a good way. But Russell Wilson, yeah, he's, they're going to sing Kumbaya or whatever with him and whatever. But either way, I'd rather you feel that anger and use it in a good way to be ready to go against the Bengals in 10 days.
Yeah. I got to be honest. I'd rather see him really angry than like, not that big of a deal. I mean, the same fans that are mad that they're mad would be mad if they weren't mad, I feel like. Zach, what did you think?
If this team is the team I believe it is, then this is exactly what they needed. This is what we didn't get in 2020. This is what the 11-0 team never got, the punch in the face, and where you got held to the consequences for bad actions. 11-0 team, for my opinion, never had that, and then we collapsed because we didn't know how to handle anything. This is a punch in the face. I think around halftime, I told my family, I'm like, just so you know, we deserve to lose this game. If we win, it's rewarding bad behavior. Right now, we deserve to and so I'm hoping this will end up being that moment where we all talk about, like in the 2005 season, we went on the historic streak to get into the playoffs. We're going to talk about how losing to the Browns in that way turned our season into what made it contending. I believe this team has that in.
Yeah. Bob, what about you?
I mean, here's the thing. We've lost 3 games this season to probably the worst 3 teams on our schedule.
I was thinking the same thing.
I mean, the Colts are not good. I mean, Joe Flacco played terrible, except against us. Although in relief, he had looked good going up into that game. Dallas is awful. They were awful when they had Dak, and now they're really bad. Cleveland was 2-8. I mean, so I don't draw the comparisons to the 2020 team because I feel like they beat the bad teams that we should have beat.
That's fair.
And the whole 2020 thing is a myth to me. They weren't frauds. COVID derailed that season.
Yeah.
When they got pushed all the way back on the Ravens game, the whole team got screwed up. They lost Bud Dupree. The Ravens game right after that, or the Commanders game, they finally lose after that. It all fell apart. The NFL, as far as I'm concerned, derailed that season. I don't think they would have won the Super Bowl in 2020, but that team was not a fraud. They were good. They just ran out of gas when the NFL screwed them down the stretch. I don't know what to make of this team. I do know that I don't feel like they can march into Buffalo and beat Buffalo at this point. But that being said, with their defense, could they maybe make something happen? Feel a lot better if that game was in Acrisure than it is in Buffalo. And we kind of gave that opportunity away last night. Look, I've been rooting for the Steelers for a long, 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 long time. I mean, I got almost 50 years in with this team. And I can tell you, Nolan Cowher very much were about home field. Let's get the home field. and there were no long stretches of losses. Tomlin, for whatever reason, he doesn't have that urgency to get the top seed, or he hasn't had the talent to get the top seed. Whatever reason, he hasn't gotten it. So we end up playing big games on the road in the playoffs. We've been bad at home under him in the playoffs. We've been bad on the road under him at the playoffs. We also won a Super Bowl 15 years ago. So I don't know what to make of this team at this point. I'm kind of torn. I think we're pretty good. I think if we get a home playoff game, we're going to win one. I don't want to see us fall out of the division lead, though, because if we do, I'm not as confident that this team can go on the road and beat anybody.
I think that makes
sense. In the playoffs,
yeah.
Qualify in the playoffs.
And I think, too, I keep telling myself that, we need to make it to the playoffs, because once you make the playoffs, you hit 0 and everything starts over again. And, we've seen teams that win nearly every game lose in the playoffs. You know what I mean? We've seen for ourselves teams that lost a bunch of games, turn it on in the playoffs and be really successful. So, I think it's a key is we look like we're headed in that direction. And hopefully we get, our shit figured out before we get there on how we play some of these harder teams and start early, finish strong, and be a little bit more consistent.
We didn't get hurt, right?
Yeah.
We're healthy from that game. That's the one positive, right?
Yeah, I didn't hear
any call that healthy
injuries. Yeah, I mean, no physical injuries, maybe some emotional damage there after that game.
Some scars.
Emotional scars.
So after the game was over, I'm sure no one is surprised that Myles Garrett was running his fat mouth after the game. And look, hey, you know what? I as much as I dislike the guy, when you win, you also win the right to run your mouth a little bit. And unfortunately put himself in that position. I think he and TJ, I think the constant comparison is a little bit absurd given that they play different positions and that, they're played differently and utilized differently. But I wanted to see if you guys had any thoughts about Garrett's comments last night, considering we talked about his earlier comments when we did our pregame show.
Do you ever hear TJ talk like that after winning? Never. So
do you think this puts TJ, and do you think that TJ is now out of the race for Defensive Player of the Year?
I'm not there yet. There's still plenty of games left.
Because this is Watt's second 3-game sack thing. So I'm not saying, it's not the same thing, but if TJ suddenly goes on a 3-game sack run, all of a sudden he's back. So all it takes is one right now between these two. It's just a 1 game. Now I thought it was weird for Garrett to come out beforehand and say, oh, well, no one should say anything about either one. Then afterwards making comments like that, I'm like, you're ridiculously inconsistent, sir.
He's like a child on the playground. Relic brings up that Garrett says the DPOY goes through him, yet he's had multiple games this year with big goose eggs. And so, today's conversation in some of the national media is, this TJ not having any sacks against this terrible Browns offensive line yesterday puts him out of the DPOY run. But then why wouldn't Garrett also be out if he's had games where he's done nothing all season? Bob, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the only thing I would say to Myles Garrett.
You were serious about that?
I mean, come on. Yeah, congratulations. You got 8 sacks on the year. 6 in 2 games. What about the other games there, Myles? TJ, has he been as impactful? I would say yes, even though he's impacting the game because you have got to put 3 guys on him on every single play. Teams have finally recognized that. If you're dumb enough to play him one-on-one, he immediately responds with a big play. We laugh about, Dave's not here. We laugh about Nick Herbig and the Hall of Fame Herbig and the whole Jameson Williams thing. That was good fun. But bottom line is, part of the reason Herbig and Alex, before he got hurt, was having such a big impact is because they basically said, Herbig and Alex, you beat us because he ain't beating us. And that's okay. The Steelers defense, when they're healthy, can take advantage of that. Last night was just a weird game. I don't know. Although I will say this. The first half, where was Nick Herbig? He was in DeJuan James' arms. And I don't know if anybody zeroed in on that. I was particularly enjoying that matchup because DeJuan James is other than Darnell Washington.
I thought he wasn't playing.
No, that wasn't
No, he
DeJuan
played.
Jones. No, that wasn't
Yeah,
DeJuan
he
Jones.
wasn't
That was a
playing.
third
He was
string of
hurt.
Duffy. I wrote an article on that.
Yeah, that
Jones
was the guy
out.
who filled in for him.
That
You're
was a
still
Duffy.
right about him
That was a third.
holding him,
Yeah.
but wrong player. Yeah.
Oh no, he.
Third string
I mean, maybe he wasn't, but I don't know how they found a clone of him. But I mean, Herbig was running, and it looked like a little kid jumping into his father's arms. I mean, there was such a huge size disparity that I was like, oh my God, how did DeJuan Jones sneak on the field?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as the game went on, though, big and slow and strong beats speed when he's fresh. But by the second half, and I think that's when Herbig ratcheted it up, was okay. Now, big boy, I'm going to run by you because you can't keep catching me. And that play against Jameis was huge. I mean, yeah.
Resident statistician Relic brought up that TJ Watt is 1 sack behind Garrett, first in forced fumbles, 10th in solo tackles. Get at me, Mr. Garrett, with 39th in tackles, 54th in assists, seconds in fumbles, and second in fumbles. So big yawn. I got to agree. I also wanted to pull this back up that Relic had put in here. He believes, and I love this because this is like a man after my own heart, that the Steelers are a playoff team, but we'll overlook certain teams because of history or record. We have limited weapons and shoddy coaching at times, but we can beat the Bills and the Chiefs, but it's on us to do it though. So I agree. I think we've got some opportunities. And I wanted to bring up one more. John brought up that the offensive line will have to make drastic improvements if there's any hope for playoff success. And so before we leave, I wanted to just quickly touch on this because I think we've seen the offensive line look better this year. I felt like maybe collectively that group took a step back last week. Do you know what I mean? For the first time, you're not pointing a finger at just Broderick Jones or just Dan Moore or just whoever. I felt like collectively the group wasn't as good last night. Do you feel like that offensive line can take that step forward and maybe another one or two to get where they need to be to really be successful?
I think they're regressing. Sorry, David, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think the Ravens kind of exposed this offense a little bit with bringing pressure. I think we're going to see teams bring more pressure moving forward. Because the Ravens brought pressure and our offense really struggled. Now you see the Browns bring a lot of pressure. Guess what? We struggled. And so I think that's what you're going to see moving forward from teams. They're going to bring a lot more pressure because it's a bad recipe. Wide receivers can't get separation. Russell Wilson holds on the ball, and the O-line struggles with blitzes and pressure in general. That's what I predict moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we regressed. The tackles, Dan Moore is kind of regressing to his mean.
He is.
But the problem is now you're starting to see the pressure come through the middle. And I think Mason and Zach especially are struggling in pass protection right now. I think it can be fixed. I hope it will get fixed. If it doesn't get fixed, then it's going to get worse. But this also is, it kind of plays into one of the reasons why we were skeptical about Russell Wilson, because he is not a quick thrower of the football. He doesn't make quick decisions. If you're going to get blitzed, if you're going to get tons of pressure, you have to get the ball out of your hands. That's how you beat the blitz. That's how, when you look at guys like Brady and Burrow and Mahomes, you come at them with the blitz, no problem. You're coming from here. There goes the ball right there. Sorry, you didn't get to us. Or, hey, I'm going to toss it right over you, and it's got to come out quick. You can't hold the ball and throw deep against the blitz. You just can't. And we don't have, Pickens is really good at beating people, but he's not instant beat. It's not 5 yards and he's got it. He's got to get 10, 15 yards down the field for that combat catch.
Yeah.
You don't have a guy who can beat you off the line like a Jamar Chase. And, okay, I can throw the go ball 15 yards instead of 40.
All right, before we wrap it up for the day, does anybody have any final thoughts, things we didn't get to, something that's burning inside of your chest you feel you need to unload before we move on to next week's Bengals game, where our old friend Jermaine Pratt is already on Twitter talking shit about how that's a guaranteed win for them next week. Man cannot keep the Steelers out of his mouth.
I am
From
really
what
sorry that my Nostradamus September 8th record is still intact. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we are too. We are too. No
I'm
more
sorry.
predictions from
And
you.
I'm scared because I had them losing to the Bengals. I originally, September 8th, I had them losing to the Bengals, guys. I'm
Yeah, well,
sorry.
let's hope that's wrong.
Yeah, I
can't
want the
predict
streak
all
to
that.
end. I wanted
I
it to
really
end
do.
last night, but I was just like, ugh, all right, this is not
Yeah,
good.
I truly believe this is an aberration. I honestly do, and I'm gonna stick with this is exactly what this team needed at exactly this time. Because if we're not the kind of team that can get right after this kind of loss in 10 days and knowing the record we have and all that, we're not the kind of team I thought. So prove
Yeah.
it to me, guys.
Relic is still mad we didn't use the sideline, and he's going to stay angry about it. There's a lot to be angry about in those final couple of minutes, 2 minutes.
I didn't hate the up the seam throw to Pat. I thought he got the first down. Although I would have honestly 50 seconds you got to score a touchdown. I would have called the timeout there. They lost like 15 seconds on that play after the fact. I think that's where I would have used the timeout because then they did throw that one little out to Austin where they got it to like the 35 and all that stuff. I mean, I didn't hate it if you use the timeout, but if you let the time tick and then it doesn't matter if you use the sideline at that point. I don't know about that. Here's the one thing I'll say. We knew going into this game we hadn't played our best football. We certainly didn't play our best football last night. I think this team has another year, and they've got 10 days to get ready. And please chirp away, Cincinnati, piss off Minka, because Lord knows we need him to show up and actually do something when we play you guys.
You see on Relic.
All right, look, Relic, I was just giving you compliments, and now I'm taking them all back. I revoke everything I said.
I just give the pregame speeches.
Yeah, I take it all back now. All right, we will be back next Monday. We usually do our recap show on Monday evenings at 6:30, but we will be doing something else fun instead. So look to show up on Monday. We'll have a bunch of little segments planned out and do some fun stuff. We'll definitely want to get all of you guys involved. And then tonight you have your David is the Fantasy Football King show, right? Or whatever you call it.
Right? Excuse me, he's the co-king.
I knew Bob was going to say something.
Co-king. Sorry. Poor Dave isn't even here to defend himself. What time are you guys on tonight with that?
8:15.
8:15. So we appreciate you. If you tuned in today, it was an awesome crowd, a lot of awesome contributions from the viewers, and we really appreciate it. If you're catching this later after it's already been taped, still drop us a comment. We want to hear what you have to say. You can find all of us on Twitter, or social media handles are up there. You can also find the Steelers Sanctuary page and the Steelers Sanctuary podcast page on Twitter. The podcast page is also on Blue Sky now if you're there. We're working on building that following. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. It does help us grow, and we are growing, and we really appreciate you all tuning in. That's the only reason it's getting anywhere. So thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
In case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Yeah.